is nothing quite like a television newsroom. Many things may come close, but nothing quite matches the intensity, the energy, the electric nature of it all. But early in the morning, when the first person arrives on the scene in the 11Action News offices, it doesn't seem that way. It's 5 o'clock in the morning when that first person goes to work. First on the agenda is preparing the news to be delivered at 6:25 in the morning during the CBS morning program. Jim Lytle and Bob Bray share that duty and give a weather forecast as well as news headlines. The first Arkansas news of the day on television. At 5:30, producer David Brewer is on the scene. He will begin making the decisions as to what stories are aired on our midday report of 11Action News at 11 in the morning. That program is anchored by Drew Bracken, who comes in at 7:30. It's roughly the same time of the morning when the newsroom starts to really gear up for the day ahead. Assignment editor Terry Caldwell mans the hub of newsroom activity.
Most organized groups or agencies send us notices of their meetings or news conferences or whatever it may be. We rely on the police scanner to find out what's going on as far as police and fire departments on breaking news stories. And then the thing that I think really makes a critical difference, stories that we anticipate are important or interesting to people before other agencies or other people realize that important or interesting, which really involves being on top of what's going on in the community for us. In other words, we have to recognize that something may come up to be a problem for the city council next week, but if we can see that it's developing as a problem, we can do the story before and be ahead of the game before it becomes apparent or before anyone nails down and says that's something important.
The first reporters get into the office at 8, along with the first photographers. They are ready to cover early breaking stories. Most of the rest of the crews are on the scene by 9 in the morning when we hold a daily assignment meeting to brief everyone on who's doing what and when and where.
Private investigators hearing at 10, Ginger said you had some particular interest in that. Okay. That has been pretty controversial in the state. It has become a racial issue, in fact, on the operation of various private investigation firms. The point is, there's one firm in particular that's named in there that's had all kinds of citations against them. The operator of that depends that the private investigators board, which has on it some owners of other private investigating firms, is trying to run him out of business, basically. And the firm that's been cited the most is black-owned and primarily operated.
There's a licensing problem with that?
Well, the thing is there are problems with all the security services. Yet he's saying, and I think he has a good case from what I read there, that they're picking on him. What he's done, he's researched a lot of the other firms and found an equal number of relatively minor discrepancies.
It is after this meeting that reporters research their stories, photographers ready their film and tape equipment, and 11Action News swings into action.
Is what it would.
On this day, reporter Ginger Casey and photographer Rupert Robertson prepare a report on state government regulating the private investigator business. The story first takes them to the state capitol, but will lead to several locations during the day.
Security guards are in just about every building that you look in nowadays, and it's important that these people be very well trained. I mean, they're almost acting as police officers, so I try to get right down to the human level, so to speak, and interview, like say, the security guards. I went and interviewed a few of them today. It's sometimes hard when it's just a meeting, but, well, a news director once told me that if you get it down to the people level, that's probably where it's best.
Well, first of all, you want to find out the direction the reporter's going to take on the story. And that way you can get a general idea of what exactly they're going to need to cover. And what you do is you just simply try and stay within their boundaries, the way the story is written. Now, if you create a story on your own or go out on a story by yourself, that's something else altogether. You just try and create a flow pattern. You want to try and take the viewer and put them at the scene of whatever you're going on. So you really want to try and get them involved as much as you possibly can.
It will not be the only story this crew covers on this day, nor do other 11 Action News reporters and photographers have the luxury of working on just one story most days. It's a constant process of going here, going there, doing this, doing that. There's a lot of news to be covered in a day, and many times you don't even know something's going to happen. That's called spot or breaking news. And while it's some of the most exciting news to report, it's also some of the most disruptive news to the daily plan laid out hours before by the assignment editor. On this day, a terrible fire breaks out at a Las Vegas casino hotel. 11 Arkansans are staying there. That story will take precedence over other stories, and where one story goes in, another usually goes out.
Not having it signed, and you got 30 seconds of this guy looking at.
It is this person, the producer, who makes sense out of the myriad of news covered during the day. At 11 Action News, that person is our senior producer, Terry Bynum.
I have to make the show flow from the beginning to the end like a piece of music through a reporter package where they have this, they wrap around the sound bites on the stories they go out on, or something that the anchor will voice over on the set, or a story that they'll read that has no pictures with it. They have to be put together so that they'll flow from the beginning to the end and not bore the viewer. The writing has to flow too. The writing is for the ear, and that's my biggest problem, is getting the reporters and the writers to learn that they are writing for the ear. People, unlike a newspaper, people don't have a chance to come back and read something over if they miss it the first time. Here they get one shot at it. If they miss it, we've not done our job right.
The formatting of the 6 o'clock newscast actually begins to happen as soon as Terry Bynum comes to work in the morning. But the lineup is explained in a 2 p.m. production meeting attended by the news director, senior producer, assignment editor, the anchors, Sam Jones and Jill Becker, production assistant Bridget Coleman, and the producer of the 10 p.m. news, Paula Shaw. It is at this meeting that all are briefed on what actually happened in covering the news during the day, and just how it fits together in the producer's mind.
The question here, I guess, more than anything, the central point of the story is a competence of private investigators. There are surprisingly, I think if you stop and realize, surprisingly large number of private investigators, security guards, that sort of operation around. Doing a story on the interest in who shot JR. The story will include some clips from Dallas network supplied showing of some of the prime suspects and various people's opinions on the key answer.
And plus this will cross-plug a 10 o'clock package on reaction.
What Terry was saying, to do it live on tape, as if like we did the night of the election. Of course, you weren't here to see those, but we did it as if it was a live report, except we used tape, and the reporters went out and did like a stand-up and an interview. It could be in a thing like that, and it could be watching what's going on with the show, and then at the point where they actually do make the person who shot him known, you could get the reaction and make a quick voiceover and then interview a couple of people around him and then close it out and bring it back.
Pretty sick. However, there's a difference there. That he doesn't have the who had the passion to fire for football.
And by 2:30 or so, we have a lineup, a blueprint for the evening newscast. Of course, that blueprint will change during the course of the afternoon as news stories develop. More of that spot news happens, and as developments change. It's important that the newscast be changeable. That's the nature of news itself, after all. And the people who prepare the day's news for you have to be flexible, to be resilient, and yet to be firm and strong in the decisions they make, too. It's not an easy job. In mid-afternoon, a reporter and photographer usually arrive back in the newsroom to complete the preparations on their day's work, to get it ready for airing at 6 p.m. Final phone calls are made. Film is fed into the processor, which develops it. Videotape does not need to be processed, but reporters and photographers spend time viewing it prior to editing. And that editing is a crucial process, too.
There's a lot of pressure involved in meeting a deadline. Sometimes we don't get scripts until late. And we have, we've got to get the stories finished. Our stories are for the public. Our work is for the public. And if we don't get our job done and get it done in time, then all of our work has gone to waste. And there's a lot of pressure involved.
I like that shot right there. Why don't you put that in over his face?
The people who make up our sports department may not come to work at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, but they stay busy. The amount of work it takes to fill up that 4 minutes of airtime is tremendous.
I think the 4.5 minutes you can use to your advantage of doing things in a short way where it doesn't bore anybody, and plus you get a lot in, and then of course at 10 o'clock you come back with a completely different show if you're talking about 2 shows. But what you try to do is pick sound bites. If you go out and interview a coach, you try to find out the points that he makes in a short period of time. That makes sense. And the word stories you keep to a minimum. And in 4.5 minutes like we have here, we have at times put on anywhere from 9 to 10 to 11 pieces of video.
There's probably nothing in our daily lives that affect us more on a continuing basis than the weather.
Meteorologist Ken Rainey is charged with bringing you what research tells us is the thing you most want to know each night, the weather. He's a pro, a member of the American Meteorological Association, a real weather forecaster.
There's certain terms that meteorologists use all the time that are peculiar to them, like all rainfall is activity, and all states are areas and activity, and like this, when it's really just as easy to say Texas rather than area, and rain rather than activity, I think that we should talk in everyday terms.
Decisions are constantly being made on the stories we have covered since early morning. Decisions that will not stop being made until the newscast is off the air.
Hey, Ginger, your piece is going to be bumped from the 6. I don't have time for it.
Well, what's the problem?
I just don't have time for it. Other things that come up during the day that are more important. The story is basically undated. So it's either going to have to go at 10 or for the weekend.
And so a day's work seems to be wasted. It's not really. The private eye story will still be worth showing during the weekend. But not having your story shown the day you work on it can be frustrating. Reporters learn to be very flexible. They have to be, because life goes on in the newsroom as 6 o'clock approaches. Behind the scenes, detail work is being done by the producer and the production assistant. It is these details which can be overlooked easily, of course, but which are very important. And just before we go on the air, the director and production crew prepare to handle the technical aspects of that newscast. It all comes together as the show goes on.
Because Americans need homes, and America needs to build them.
30 seconds.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Who shot Jay Carr? Was it Sue Ellen, Bobby Ewing, Jordan Lee, Kristen Shepard, Mary Lee Stone? The world finds out tonight on Dallas. This is CBS.
Hand ID up. Stand by.
This is 11Action News with Sam Jones and Joe Becker, meteorologist Ken Rainey, and sports director Gary Hogan.
Good evening, everyone. It was tragedy in Las Vegas today as the MGM Grand Hotel caught fire early this morning. At least 75 are known dead. That toll is...
A recent issue of U.S. News and World Report says that metropolitan Little Rock is one of the major cities in the U.S. where, quote, business is best, unquote. In the first of a 2-part story, Fred Jordan looks at how that magazine came to the conclusion and if business will continue to be best in Little Rock.
And with the weather turning colder, fire officials say it's time now to inspect your heaters and your fireplaces. Drew Bracken has more.
Here in Arkansas, people are naming a variety of suspects, as Fort Atkinson found out this afternoon.
For the last couple of days, the computer has been hinting at a storm developing down here.
Tonight in Jonesboro, one of the Class 4A semifinal games will find the Hurricanes playing host to Bill Reed's Jacksonville Red Devils.
Boogie Woogie Mama. She's queen of the road at night, traveling from state to state, and traveling Arkansas reporter Chuck Dovish traveled with her.
Nighttime and the Truck Stop Cafe.
Well, we'll find out tonight who shot JR, and of course at 10 o'clock, a reaction from your neighbors as to what happened on Dallas tonight. We'll see you then.
And at 6:30, it starts all over again for the 10 p.m. newscast. A new process of editing, of taping and filming stories, all to update the news for you at 10. And it takes all those people to do the job and to do it right. Many are unsung heroes of the newsroom because they don't get the glory on camera or on film and tape. They're behind the scenes, but their jobs are just as important as those who you see in your living room each evening. Each is trained for his or her job.
And when I leave the office each night, I know things are in good hands. The news that we need to know, you and I, is being prepared well. That's the hallmark of a good news organization like 11Action News. I'm Tony Windsor, the news director.